Hi, today's thought is about getting the question wrong. It comes from the lengthy section in Matthew 21 and 22, where Jesus was asked a series of questions by the religious leaders of the day. It was a tough kind of week for him, as his personal authority and identity were directly questioned. Now, authority is a tricky thing. Most of us probably feel we don't have enough of it and so go scrabbling around for it in some way or other. And then there are those that have authority or appear to have it, who often get to realize that it doesn't make a lot of difference because an awful lot of people ignore it and just do what they want to do anyway. What is the relationship between authority and getting people to actually believe and do the right thing? That's been the interesting challenge for us all during this COVID world that we live in. The science has said that we faced a new virus threat and that minimizing human contact would be the best strategy to contain it. But how do you stop humans touching each other or getting up close and comfortable, which is how most of us want to be with at least a few other humans a lot of the time? Do you educate, suggest, encourage, coerce, legislate, or just use brute force? The question of authority, who has it, and does it really change things anyway, dominates the narrative in this part of Matthew's Gospel. The religious leaders of the day want to know if he has the authority to do and to say all these things. But Jesus, like God, knows that that isn't the real question. You can have all the authority in the world, like God has, but that in itself won't change the world and make it a better place. Because the way God made the world, everyone has the capacity to overthrow authority and to choose to do their own thing. So what exactly are you doing today? When they asked him directly, verse 23, what authority have you got to do these things? He turned the opportunity back on them and in effect refused to answer their question because they were too afraid to answer his. They failed partly also because Jesus asked them a better question. It's not about yours or my authority. It's about whether something is of God or not. The baptism of John, was it from God or not? So what about the things that you're planning to do today or the direction of your life? It's not about do you have the authority to do these things or go in that direction or not. It's the question of is it of God or not? Does he want you to be doing them? Of course, Jesus did answer their question as to what right he had to be doing these things or requiring anything of them, using that amazing parable in chapter 21, verse 33 to 46. The landowner who planted a vineyard, rented it out to tenant farmers, and then rightly asked for an annual share of the harvest as rent. The tenant farmers utterly refused, despite the very obvious authority the owner had to expect rent. And then, of course, in the end, he decided to send his son because he thought, wrongly, surely they'll respect him, meaning Jesus, God's son. They didn't, and they killed him. I mean, you couldn't have answered the personal authority question any plainer. Jesus simply said, I am God's beloved son. But as you can see from verse 46, they got the meaning, heard his answer to their question, but they went ahead with the plan to kill him anyway. So then it appears that the question is not about authority, it's about willingness. Which is why in Matthew's account, Jesus slips in a short parable that cuts to the heart of the thing. A bit like the prodigal son's parable. There was a man, had two sons. Said to the first, will you do work in the vineyard today? Got a fairly blunt reply. No, I won't. Get lost, Dad. No way. Got my own plans for today. My way, not yours. But, said Jesus, later the first son reflected on his rebelliousness, his self-centeredness and downright wrong attitude to his father and changed his mind, and he went and worked in his dad's vineyard. Meanwhile, his dad, who if you didn't know the prodigal son's parable, you may have thought had given up on his first son, had gone to his second son with the same request. But his second son gave the religious reply, the kind of reply that we can liturgize every Sunday morning. Know it off by heart. Yes, Lord, send me. I will, sir, he said to his dad. But he never went. There was no heart willingness in him to do his Father's will. What matters is not authority, but willingness. When God asks you to believe something, will you trust him? When God asks you to do something, will you do it? When God asks you to say something, will you say it? Because Jesus in effect says, even if God himself turned up and asked you guys to believe that I am the way, the truth, and the life, frankly, you would not believe God. So it's not about God's authority, it's about my willingness. I mean, I can pretty much guarantee all of you listening to me believe that God has authority, all authority, in fact. But it's not a question of authority, it's a matter of willingness. So we may not fully understand the degree of authority that Jesus had or who he fully was. But the question is, are we willing to follow him? Which is a tough one as we walk with Jesus through the Passion Week. Because we kind of know where all of this is leading. And it's to a painful place. So will you follow him today? To believe and do and say all that he is asking of you. Remember, it's not a question of authority. It's a question of willingness. Amen.